Welcome to Cozy Coven Chats with Jenny C. Bell, where we explore the journey of the witch. Welcome to another Cozy Coven Chat. I am your host, Jenny C. Bell, and today I'm focused on the journey of crystals, and my journey in particular with crystals. My journey has been a long journey. I started seriously working with crystals at 19. And that has resulted in my first ever book being published in July here in the US, a month later in the UK and Australia. And it's coming from Llewellyn. It's called Spirit Crystals, Discover Your Crystal Guide for Healing and Empowerment. And because it's coming out so soon, I wanted to make a little mini series in my podcast here on crystals. And I wanted to first start, of course, with my journey. As you know, I'm very interested in stories and in journeys of people, and in the witch's journey in particular, because it's such an interesting path. It's such a kind of make your own way path, right? You could be a witch for 50 years and never work with crystals, and that's okay, right? Or you could be just focused on crystals, and that's okay, right? It's such a varied kind of way to be a witch. And so I wanted to share my crystal journey with you as a way of hopefully inspiring you to work with crystals, but also to give you an understanding of where I'm coming from. And I'll start by saying that even though I have a book called Spirit Crystals, right, which is very metaphysical, very new age, even though I am a Reiki master, even though I work with angels, I consider myself a witch. So a lot of the things I do definitely probably fall into the category of spiritual, new age, or metaphysical. And I think you can do both. I think you can walk the line of both. I think of witches as being liminal beings. We hold liminal space. We walk in between worlds. And I definitely walk in between the world of witchcraft and new age spirituality, right? And that's my journey. That's who I am. And I feel comfortable in both worlds. I feel comfortable around witches. I feel comfortable around spiritual, new age, metaphysical people. There's definitely a difference, but I see the paths as converging. I feel like they're braided, they're intertwined in so many ways. They share some similar histories. You know, you can call yourself a spiritual person and do witchy things, right? You can call yourself a witch and do new agey things. So this book, I would say, is probably under the category more of new age, even though I do talk about Hecate, and there are some spells in here, some rituals that are definitely more on the witchcraft path. But it's my own thing. And I've come to just kind of, in my path, be okay with being both, being authentically both. I definitely, like I said, identify as a witch because that's my foundation, that's my grounding. And it's given me the knowledge-based understanding to be able to expand and learn like Akashic records and Reiki and stuff, because I already knew energy movement, right? I already understood energy healing on a witchy level, right? And so it's all kind of connected. So my very first, I've always liked stones and crystals, to start with that. I'm a Taurus sun, so I love to be outside. I love pretty things. I was always like collecting seashells at the beach instead of like being in the water, right? I will always pick up a shiny rock wherever I am. And when I entered college, I had to take a science, and one of them had to be a physical science. And I'd always wanted to take geology. Geology wasn't offered to me in my high school. And so I took a geology class. It wasn't Introduction to Geology. I want to say it was California Geology as the first class. I ended up taking about 6 classes with this professor. He was amazing. I was the treasurer of our geology club in college, and he was definitely not into what he called like even then the woo-woo. He would say, "You're not here because like you're interested in the woo-woo part of crystals." I was like, "Oh no, definitely not." Like, nope, not for me. I just really am interested in why they're the color they are, the minerals, right? And so I was doing that. And at the same time in our town, we had a metaphysical store open up. And that store offered a class on crystal healing. And so I'm geology club treasurer, by day. And then taking this crystal healing class and really diving in and going in and talking to the teacher afterwards and really starting my crystal healing journey at 19. And it was a really beautiful way to start things because I lived in the Mojave Desert. And if you've ever lived in a desert, rock hounding, rock finding, so amazing because they're all exposed, right? There's not a lot of plants hiding the rocks. And so with my professor, I got to go get halite, which is a special pink salt that smells so horrible. The town opens it up for a weekend and you can go excavate the salt and you have to wear like waterproof boots. And it's like this dead kind of fishy smell. Really kind of gross, but beautiful pieces of halite. My professor took us out. I found garnet. I found opal on one of our extended field trips we did, which was camping as well. I have found, went to a talc mine. I've been to a gold mine. I have found boron out in, or borax out in Boron, which is in the desert. It was just, I got this kind of ground up understanding, taking all these geology classes, right? 101 and California geology, and then geology of just the desert and historical geology, taking all of these courses. By the way, as an English major, I only needed one of these science classes, but I was hooked and I just really loved my professor. Like I said, he was amazing. And he actually like gave me a wedding gift when I got married. Like he was really cool. And I really felt this craving for this understanding of this knowledge. And he told me I was a natural, and there wasn't a lot of women in geology. And he actually had me go to like a speaking thing where it was like women in geology. And he's like, see, there's not a lot of women. Like, this is a really good field for you. And I was like, no, like I always wanted to be a teacher. I didn't even consider being like a geology professor like him. So I was doing all of this. And then meanwhile, I took my first class, our textbook for my crystal healing class. I'm showing it on camera on YouTube. It's called Crystal Wisdom, Volume 6, Crystal and Gemstone Dictionary, a complete concise guide to the New Age gemstones and crystals, listing the spiritual attributes of each stone by Dolphin. And it's Dolfyn. I have become a collector of Dolphin books. That was a name that the author went by. They are true gems, pun intended. But the book is just very stripped down. It's hand stapled, but it offers like a great dictionary understanding of all the crystals. And then my teacher, what part of the class is that we got the book when we got there, and then she told us which crystals we were going to be learning about or focusing on for that class. And she let us go into the store. Part of what we paid for is for the crystals, and intuitively pick out one of each of the crystals that we were discussing. And so I had my book, I had my little notepad, I had all my crystals, we did meditations, we did all these things. And it really was life-changing because I knew there was potential in crystals and understanding, connecting, and healing with them from all the books I had read on witchcraft. And I already had some crystals, but I just needed someone almost like to give me permission of what's possible. And I think that happens a lot in spirituality and witchcraft. We just need to know what's possible because, in our modern society and Western culture, a lot of what we believe in is considered fantasy. And people, if you can't see it, it's a very, we live in a very science-based culture. It's very materialistic, meaning that if we can't see it in the material world, if we can't prove it, then it doesn't exist. And so I needed to have someone tell me what's possible with crystals and show me and let me connect with it for me to really unleash my own understanding and connection with them. And so, at the same time, I'm taking this crystal healing class, and then there was she gave us homework and we could check in with her, and it was about, working with the crystals and how to connect with them and meditate with them and use them and work with them and make elixirs, all of these things. And then I'm also out in the field collecting crystals, understanding the rock cycle, learning how they're made. And it just really justified it for me. It's like, well, if these crystals are taking like millions of years through all of this change and movement, they're alive. They're alive to me, right? It made sense because it's like they can metamorphosize. The lava seems alive when it flows. It's amazing. And so that really, at the age of 19, got me going on my journey. And from then on, I became a crystal collector. Nothing crazy. I still would love one of those big amethyst lava bombs that you can get. They are like amethyst crystal, and the outside is like a lava encasement. I wish I had bought one a long time ago when they weren't so expensive. But I digress. But I always liked little tumbled stones because that's what we used in our class. And I've come to prefer, as I've gotten older, some raw crystals as well. I like the chipped crystals. But I became a collector and trying to understand how the crystals worked, right? And how different ones affected my energy and how different ones affected spell work. And it just became a very intuitive practice, right? I didn't buy another crystal book for a good 20 years, really. I just didn't feel the need. I had my one book and myself and all the practices I've learned and the geology background. I just kind of felt like I'm good to go. And I really do think that the best path with crystals and stones is an intuitive path. I would say something similar about plants and herbs, but you have to be careful because you can be poisoned. We don't want you to hurt yourself, right? But with crystals and stones, for the most part, just picking it up and putting it at your heart space and taking some deep breaths and figuring out how to connect with it is a really great method. And so, so I began at 19, and then I've always had crystals in the home. I've always gone rock hounding and collecting crystals. When we moved here to the PNW, went and collected serpentine. And I'm still wanting to collect obsidian, which is near here as well. And I was always kind of open. And then I joined Angel Team, Kyle Gray's Angel Team in 2019, 2020. And I really started to reawaken my quest for knowledge. And this time it wasn't completely witchy based. It was based on also New Age and metaphysical. I started also learning the Akashic Records at that point, started connecting with angels. And it was through Kyle Gray that I took my first class on crystal skulls. I had already been drawn to a crystal skull prior to taking his class, and I already had one. And I had been debating on which book to get, ended up getting a book by Judy Hall. And I had read the book, and then he offered a class. It was kind of like a one-off. It was an Angel Team, and he's like, if the skull makes you uncomfortable, you don't need to sign up for it. It was pay for this one-time live class with Kyle. And at the time, I think he was working on he has a crystal certification course, and I think he was working on that and wanted to do something just on the skulls. And so I took that class. I think it was about 2 hours live class, and it just reawakened what I already knew. Kyle is very Reiki based, and we used a very similar method to Reiki energy movement to connect with the crystal, which I had already been doing intuitively. And we learned how to get our crystal skull's name and really work with it. And doing that just opened up a huge pathway for me. So I'll dive into crystal skulls in a later episode, just, especially if you're interested, even if you don't have one. And yeah, the Indiana Jones movie is based on some actual kind of truths, half-truths, and some beliefs that people have on crystal skulls. So if you've seen the movie, we can talk about that another time. But I took that crystal skull class. I connected with my Lemurian crystal skull. And then I started meditating with her every day and her guidance. And then there was another one, a little male one. I started connecting with him and meditated with both of them daily. And then I started having them out when I opened my Akashic Records because they were really giving me a lot of clarity, a lot of guidance. And so I wanted to just go in the records. I would go in the records. I had already had a couple of classes on Udemy, and I went in the records and was like, what should be my next course? And in one, I record. So the way I have my clairsenses, or I'm clairaudient, I hear. And so sometimes it's I don't even hear, I just speak, really. So I always have my voice recorder on my phone out, and I'll open the records and I'll just start speaking. And it sounds different than my actual voice, which is why I don't share it with a lot of people. And it's different than I would speak. So then I really know it's not me. Someone is coming in and using me as a vessel, and I'm channeling. And so I got that I was to teach spirit crystals. And I was given all of the information on which crystals and how they're connected. And really that entire book is channeled and written intuitively. What is so wild and synchronistic and beautiful is so many of the things I channeled later while writing the book, trying to get like research and having sources, like making sure what I'm saying is on track with what other people are saying. It always was. And this is stuff I wasn't aware of because, like I said, I wasn't buying crystal books. It wasn't something I was actively studying. It was just I had worked with crystals for so long that they were really speaking to me. And I was actually afraid to share that with people, that they really were speaking to me and I was really channeling straight from the crystals, until I recently listened to the first season of the telepathy tapes, which is another podcast. And I've talked about on TikTok and in our coven, and I highly recommend, but it's a podcast based on nonverbal autistic children and their caregivers and some of the amazing things, the gifts that these autistic children have. And one of them talked about like they're spellers, so they type out what they think and what they feel, and they're always so beautifully written. But one of them recently, like he shared about how he could hear the crystals were talking to them, and we all know they have a frequency, right? That's one of the cool things about quartz crystals. They have their own frequency, and they're piezoelectric, and they, you know, electricity currents. Their quartz are in our phones and in our watches, and it's an amplifier. We already knew that. And there's like the different sound bowls when they're made out of crystal. I think they have a very beautiful sound and very different than a metal sound bowl. So we kind of like, you know, we all know there's like more information now about this frequency and things, but he was saying he could hear them. He could hear them like I can hear them, right? So I think that the frequency, right, some of us can really connect with and really just have to be open to and listen to. And I know this sounds probably far-fetched for a lot of people, but like I said, this was channeled information. And when I went to go look in books, and it just solidified that, yeah, this is what other people are saying about this crystal, or this is what other people are saying about this number, because I was given sacred numbers for each crystal. I was given archetypes. I was given past life information for each spirit crystal. I mean, I was given so much information, and then to see that it all made sense, I think it's pretty amazing. And so my crystal journey has always been one of intuition. It's always been like, I have the Judy Hall encyclopedic books. They're beautiful. The Crystal Bibles are a 3 set. She's a wonderful writer. It's great information. And it's really good if you like are going shopping for a crystal, or you receive a crystal and you're like, what do other people say about it? But honestly, most of my journey has just been intuitive. It's been, I find a stone or a crystal out in the world. If I can't identify it, I just work to connect with it. I learn what the healing properties are. I pick up a crystal at a crystal shop and decide, you know, is this for me? Yes or no? Bring it home. And then like maybe later, after months of working with crystal, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to look it up, and it'll be exactly what I was already getting, right? It's the healing information I was receiving. So my journey really has been about the spirituality, the intuition. I love the science. I really do. I think it's really fascinating, and it just kind of solidifies. And I think anybody that's really interested in crystals should review some basic geology, because it's going to amplify it. I think a lot of witches are science-minded. You know, we are probably, especially like New Age people, are seen as airy-fairy and kind of like out there. But I think many of us are actually pretty grounded and try to merge the science with the spirit, like an alchemist, right? In alchemy, that was what they were doing. They were merging the science and the spirit as one. They weren't separating it all. And so, yes, my journey, I would say, has been intuitive. My favorite crystal is a clear quartz crystal that, and I feel justified because people will just say it's a simple one. You can find it everywhere. Sometimes it's even left out of like books or card decks because it's just seen as like, it's so prevalent. It's not important. But it was used by so many shaman of different cultures, ancient cultures. Like they really saw that as such an important crystal itself, or stone. It was when they were drawn to, when they used time and time again, that it feels like, yeah, that's, again, the intuition checks out. And so if you are on your crystal journey, I highly suggest putting the books and the internet aside and connecting with whatever crystals you already have, and in the way that I was sharing. And I'm actually going to make a podcast episode on connecting with crystals. And so just being intuitive, right? Just allowing the crystal to connect with you and share what it's here to help you with. Because they have this frequency, they have this energy, right? Everything's energy, everything has, this energy exchange. It's not in your head when you're like, I feel better when I have my crystal in my pocket. Like it's real, it's a comfort. And that's why I always say that like crystals and animal guides and plants, they're allies. I don't believe in programming a crystal and being like, this is what you're going to do for me. I think crystal gridding is different, but I don't believe in that because they're a friend, they're an ally. And if you just ask them and you work with them, you have this energy exchange, that kind of thing happens naturally. So today, if you want to get started on a crystal journey, use what's around you. You probably, being a witch, let's say in this podcast, probably have crystal jewelry or a crystal somewhere you got in an Etsy box or something, and use it to connect with. And allow yourself to believe in the magic. That's part of it, right? We have to be open and ready to receive the magic. We have to let go of the need to be like, well, am I right? Let me look it up in the book. Do other people say that that's what this crystal's for? Let that go and let yourself be open to the conversation with the crystal. Thank you so much for listening. This is a little different, right? It's a little more new age, but it's who I am. I'm wanting to be more authentically myself. Like I said, I feel I walk both worlds. I am a witch, but I'm also a spiritual person, and I see value in things like A Course in Miracles, right? And it's not for everybody, but I found value in it. I also see value in doing, certain witchy practices like freezer spells, right? So I think for me, it's all about balance. And like I said, witchcraft is kind of a cut and paste religion. You take what works and you leave what doesn't. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope that you connect with the crystal today. As always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and share with a friend. If you haven't already done so, be on the lookout for my book, Spirit Crystals: Discover Your Crystal Guide for Healing and Empowerment, available wherever you buy books.